The men that came to kill here last January were followed by others 2 months ago, with an even bloodier result. A new pattern of violence, experts say, whose threat still hangs over France.
It's totally different because of the speed of things. Things go very quickly these days. You miss something, you miss a clue, you miss a sign. Now, intelligence and police are condemned to anticipate. And this is what has not been done recently in France.
The profile of France's new enemies poses fresh problems for the state. Some only start to change their behaviour weeks before carrying out an attack. Spotting them is France's biggest security challenge. And the memorials taking place this week are a reminder of what happens when it fails.
That was our correspondent Lucy Williamson reporting. The Prime Minister has made a fresh appeal for German support over changes he wants to the European Union. David Cameron has been in Germany this morning, pushing for reforms that include a curb on benefits for migrants before the UK holds a referendum on EU membership. Our political correspondent Ross Hawkins reports.
Is that a man over there about to slip up as he tours icy Europe, trying to get a deal on limiting benefits for foreigners?
We want to make sure that welfare systems, and particularly our welfare system, is not an unnatural draw to Britain, because we do feel the pressure of excessive migration that we've had in recent years.
He said it there, he said it in this German paper. He said it no doubt to her when they met last night. He thinks EU workers should only be able to get some benefits once they've lived in the UK for 4 years.
Over the coming weeks, it's important that we make decisions in our own interests in order to get a reasonable package that will allow Britain to stay in the EU.
But she won't support a plan if she thinks it discriminates between Europeans. Neither will the man David Cameron's off to see next, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And a bad deal abroad would mean trouble at home.
Statement, the Prime Minister.
With ministers told they can fall out in public on Europe come the referendum. And some Tories sounding just that bit more sceptical than David Cameron.
My own view is I want to be, part of a reformed EU, and I've always said that. That's my preference. But if we can't get the reform we need, then Britain has a great future elsewhere and outside in a different relationship.
Which means the man taking tips here on German manufacturing's got to somehow piece together a reform that will survive the rigours of a British referendum. Ross Hawkins, BBC News.
Well, the Prime Minister's next stop is Budapest. Our political correspondent Ben Wright is there. And Ben, how will his appeal for support go down in Hungary?
Yes, Rita, Bavaria for breakfast, Budapest for a late lunch. David Cameron is racking up the miles, twisting arms, trying to persuade and cajole every other European leader to back his plan for renegotiation. And the clock is now clearly ticking very loudly. He wants a deal in Brussels in 6 weeks' time. And Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is, we think, a bit of a sticking point. The most contentious thing David Cameron is asking for, as Ross was saying, is this 4-year ban on in-work benefits for EU migrants in the UK, something David Cameron hopes will reduce EU migration to the UK. Now, many Eastern European countries are very uncomfortable with that, not just because it challenges the principle that there should be no discrimination within the EU, but it hurts their workers the most, because lots of people from countries like Hungary want to go to the UK and work. So they have a real hurdle to clear, David Cameron and Viktor Orban, during their talks in the Parliament behind me in a short time. I sense a deal is certainly possible. I don't think David Cameron would still be talking about his desire to see a 4-year ban unless he thought a compromise was there, perhaps some sort of new residency test for EU workers in the UK. It will be interesting this afternoon to get a sense of whether they are close to a compromise and what that looks like, because for David Cameron, delivering on that 4-year ban, something that addresses the immigration concerns voters have, really is critical to showing his party and voters that he's got something meaningful that matters to them from this renegotiation.
Ben, thank you. Ben Wright there. The Red Cross says thousands of civilians trapped in towns and villages in Syria are in dire need of food and medical supplies. There have been unconfirmed reports of people starving to death in the town of Madaya, northwest of Damascus, where the last aid delivery was in October. Some people are said to be eating grass and cats to survive. Our Middle East correspondent Jim Muir reports. You may find some of the pictures in his report distressing.
Activists say this is the grim result of a siege that's gone on for 6 months, with no food at all reaching the town of Madaya since October. This little boy gave his name as Muhammad Isa. We believe these pictures show him talking to a doctor recently. He said it's been a whole week since he had anything at all to eat. What would he like most, he was asked. Something sweet, he said. You're not hungry, we are, shouts this angry man at a fighter. Tempers are getting frayed. Conditions in the blockaded town have got even worse with the arrival of winter. Back in October, when the last food got in, things were already bad enough.
We saw a huge lack of basic needs such as food, water, medicine. We couldn't access Madaya or other areas since October 2015. So yes, indeed, the situation is extremely dire. We are very, very concerned.
The plight of Madaya has prompted angry demonstrations by sympathizers in other rebel-held areas further north. This man warned that if the siege of Madaya wasn't lifted, 2 government-held villages besieged by the rebels would be attacked and destroyed. That threat has been repeated by other rebel military commanders. The fate of Madaya has been linked to that of the 2 government-held villages, Fua and Kafraya, just a little further north. Under an agreement, rebel fighters have been evacuated from a town near Madaya and some pro-government fighters taken out of their 2 villages. But that agreement's now stalled, the sieges go on, and so too does the suffering. Jim Muir, BBC News, Beirut.
The time is 18 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. The Chancellor warns that Britain's economy is facing a cocktail of serious global threats and that the difficult times aren't over. And coming up, hitting an all-time high, over 2.6 million new cars were bought in 2015.
Coming up in the sport at past, a roller coaster of a ride in Auckland, but Naomi Brodie is out, beaten in straight sets by the American Sloane Stephens.
Chief Executive of Marks & Spencer, Mark Boland, is to step down in April. M&S announced this morning that sales of general merchandise, including clothes, slumped by nearly 6% in the Christmas period. However, Mark Boland insists that's not the reason he's stepping down. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports.
There was glitz and glamour in the run-up to Christmas. But it's the exit of the boss of M&S, which is the story today. He's off after the worst Christmas in women's fashion. So, was Mark Boland pushed after nearly 6 years at the top?
2 words, categorically not. People look back and say that Mark had the courage to do some of the difficult things to really put in place the infrastructure for the future.
He's revamped the website and modernised this business. Food's been fixed, but women's fashion is still struggling.
They're just not quite getting it right. There's been a good response to the last few seasons from the fashion press, but what's happening is we're not really seeing those styles and the right kind of sizing options in their regional stores, and that's, I think, a lot of customers have found that quite frustrating.
M&S had a great Christmas in food, but clothing did badly, with sales falling for the 5th year in a row. And it's this part of the business that is crucial to M&S's success and what the new boss will have to focus on. He's Steve Rowe, an M&S lifer who started as a Saturday boy at the age of 15. And he needs to come up with more than just the odd bestseller.
I think they need to decide on a market position. I think they need to review all of their brands and decide where the gaps are in their coverage. They need to improve the quality in the classic sort of staple lines, and they need to continue making the progress on the fashion that they have been making.
Trading's been tough for many retailers this Christmas, but today marks another new low for Britain's biggest clothing retailer. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
The government says it'll consider an idea to pay farmers for allowing their land to be flooded at times of heavy rainfall. The National Farmers Union is in favour of the proposal, which is intended to protect towns and villages downstream. Well, let's talk now to our environment analyst Roger Harrabin. Roger, how would it work?
Well, look, farmers obviously make money from growing their crops. They don't want water standing on their land. It ruins their livelihood. So they've been lobbying for many decades to have banks build up alongside rivers you can see as you drive or go by train through the countryside. The problem is that every drop of rain that falls has to go somewhere. So if it doesn't fall on agricultural land, it flushes down into cities. So we can have a look at Oxford in 2007, for instance. Terrible floods in Oxford then. And one computer simulation suggests that if those banks upstream of Oxford hadn't been there, those farmers, citizens would have had several feet lower of floodwater. So obviously, why not consider paying farmers to accept the land that would have gone into the city?
And the government is clearly interested in seeing if this plan could work.
Yes, I mean, the government's reviewing almost everything to do with flooding at the moment, and several schemes they could consider. There's one, for instance, in Exmoor, another example, where they're blocking up drains on the peatland to store water in the peat as part of a long-term project. That seems to be working. There's another scheme in Pickering in North Yorkshire where they're putting in a steel wall. They're going to cover it with earth. And here we can see in Northumberland they're creating log dams, scattering branches, creating ponds, all to hold back water at times of heavy rainfall. And so, you know, there are many ideas. Even this one we're going to see now, this low dam. It's a leaky dam, not a complete dam, but that holds the water upstream. Now, what the experts are saying is that schemes like this will not protect every city from every flood, but they are relatively cheap and they will help.
Roger, thank you. New car sales hit an all-time high last year, according to the latest figures. Over 2.6 million new vehicles were registered in 2015, up around 6% on the year before. Stronger consumer confidence, special deals and cheap finance are thought to have pushed up the figures. Our industry correspondent John Moylan has more.
For Steve LaRue, it's a big day. After months of waiting, he's finally picking up his new car.
I've got a rather old car. It's about 12 years, and that was my first car, so I don't get cars that often. And this particular car just sort of provided the right sort of balance for me with the economy and the style and everything.
New car sales are booming. In December, retailers registered more than 180,000. That pushed the total number for 2015 up to 2.63 million, an all-time record, and a 6% jump on the previous year.
You've seen a very strong year in new car sales, driven by probably three factors. First, economic confidence by both business and consumers. Secondly, the attractive finance deals. And thirdly, the strength of sterling, which is helping those who are importing cars offer great deals to consumers.
For the 7th year running, this car, the Ford Fiesta, was Britain's most popular model. In fact, Ford outsold all of its rivals in 2015. And the company says that 85% of those sales were using finance plans where customers effectively lease the vehicle. Volkswagen also saw its sales rise in 2015, despite admitting cheating diesel emissions tests. Amid growing concern over the impact diesel engines have on air quality, the VW scandal has raised more questions about the future of diesel vehicles.
I think without a doubt the headlines have put the whole petrol-diesel debate on every customer's shopping list. I expect to see a growth back into petrol at the expense of diesel in family cars and smaller cars. In commercial vehicles and larger cars, I think diesel will always remain the primary option.
Right, Steve, you've got 2 keys.
Can these bumper car sales continue?
Thank you very much. There you go. Enjoy.
If interest rates rise, some potential buyers may think twice. But Ford is predicting it will drive away record numbers of new cars yet again in 2016. John Moylan, BBC News.
A state of emergency has been declared in California in response to a methane gas leak that began more than 2 months ago. Thousands of people have been moved from their homes on the edge of Los Angeles. Richard Lister reports.
In the sunny hills outside Los Angeles, this natural gas storage site seems secure. The sky looks clear. But look at the view from an infrared camera. That purple cloud is methane, and it's been pouring from the wellhead for 3 months. Methane may be invisible to the naked eye, but additives give it a sulphurous smell, and residents of the nearby Porter Ranch community say it's making them sick.
I've been nauseous, I've felt lethargic, my kids have had nosebleeds, they've had headaches. It's surreal. We're a living science experiment, I believe.
Others in the neighbourhood say their pets have become sick too, developing unexplained lesions around their faces, which are also being blamed on the gas. Protests have forced the gas company to relocate some 2,500 families from the area. It insists that while the gas may be unpleasant, it's not dangerous. But the company's also warned the leak could take another 2 months to fix.
Once the leak is stopped, we'll be able to evaluate what caused the leak, and we will be able to evaluate how much natural gas escaped.
Some 80,000 metric tons of methane are thought to have been released so far. That's caught the attention of the actor and activist Leonardo DiCaprio, together with one of America's most famous campaigners.
I know everyone thought, oh, this happened on October 23rd, and we have this situation and it's going to go away. A, we're learning it's not going away. B, this community's under a constant assault, and we're starting to find out this has been going on for years.
With so many people forced to move out of Porter Ranch, the playgrounds are mostly empty, the streets unusually quiet. Property prices in this once desirable neighbourhood have tumbled, and still the gas keeps flowing. Richard Lister, BBC News.
The national lottery operator Camelot says no one won the record jackpot of £50.4 million in last night's draw. The prize will now roll over for the 14th time to Saturday, when it's expected to reach nearly £58 million. New rules mean it'll be shared by players with 5 numbers and a bonus ball if there are no outright winners again. Well, time for a look at the weather now. Here's Jay Wynn. Jay.
Thanks, Rita. We'll start with a look at this picture of the famous Swilcan Burn Bridge at the Old Course in St Andrews, surrounded by some very large puddles. It's been raining for days in some parts of eastern Scotland, and weather warnings remain in force here. A different story further south and west. Another weather watcher sent this picture in from Cornwall earlier on. A rainbow in amongst the spells of sunshine. So, yes, there are some showers to be had, but some brighter weather is following this extensive band of cloud, which brought some persistent rain to many parts of the UK. That gets a bit stuck across some eastern parts of England, the northeast of Scotland through this afternoon. Eventually, the rain will clear away from the eastern side of England, but it'll take a little while longer. The amber weather warning remains in force for the northeast of Scotland, so be prepared for yet more heavy and persistent rainfall. But as you can see, down towards the south and west, brighter skies coming through, but with some showers and a very blustery wind. Even along the south coast, you could get gusts to 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour, and blustery too towards the London area. Sunshine just beginning to come out in London, and I think we'll have a much brighter afternoon. Further north and west, well, a bit of brighter weather coming into the northwest of England. The northeast remains a bit wet into the afternoon. Northern Ireland should see some brighter spells, a few showers moving through on the breeze, but it's the northeast of Scotland where we are concerned about the amount of rain falling on all that saturated ground. And through the evening, well, that weather warning remains in force. It's cold, wet and windy in the northeast of Scotland. The rain does eventually clear away from the eastern side of England, but as temperatures drop away northern England northwards, there's a risk of ice forming on some untreated surfaces overnight as the next batch of showers moves in from the west. That'll bring a little bit of snow over the hills of Northern Ireland, more particularly the southern uplands will see some snow through tomorrow morning, maybe a little bit into the central lowlands as a band of showers move their way across England and Wales. So there'll be some bright spells across England and Wales, but those showers moving through on the breeze. A cold day in more northern parts of the UK, maybe only 2-3 degrees in Glasgow, but up to 9 or 10 for Cardiff and for London. On into the weekend, and it looks pretty unsettled still. We've got low pressure in charge of the weather, various weather fronts moving through, bringing rain, quite a few isobars in the chart as well, which means it'll also be quite windy at times. So through the weekend, yes, there is the risk of further rain at times, and there is, of course, we've got the saturated ground, so there's potential for further flooding issues, but there is a change on the way, a change to colder conditions. A northerly breeze through the weekend is going to bring that colder air down across pretty much all parts into early next week. And with that comes a risk of a little bit of snow, but a lot of dry weather, and also some pretty cold nights in the forecast. So we could well be seeing some frosty nights and mornings early next week. Rita.
Thank you, Jay. Now, a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. The Chancellor warns that Britain's economy is facing a cocktail of serious global threats and that the difficult times aren't over. Well, that's all from us. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.